Hey everybody, it's Brett here and welcome to another exciting edition of Waze Community Office Hours. Today, I've got something super special for you. New feature alert! We're going to be meeting with Ruben from the communities team and Ofer, who is one of our WME developers, and they are going to be demonstrating for you guys this brand new feature for road width. I'm so excited for this. I can't tell you the amount of times I've been navigating with Waze and I hear that annoying chirp to reroute and it sends me off onto an off ramp and then right back onto the highway I was on. Well, today we are going to be showing you our solution to this. So without further ado, I'd love to bring up Ruben and Ofer and we'll get
Hi, thank you, Brett, for the introduction. Hi, everyone. I'm Ruben from the communities team, and together with me is Ofer from the WME team. He's a front-end developer, and he will join us for the Q&A session. So let's look at the agenda and let's see what we will be talking about today. So, of course, road width in WME. How does it look like? Why this is really important for our end users? Where should we map it and how to map it? And of course, as said from Brett, we'll have plenty of time to go through your questions and hopefully answer them. So road width in WME. That's how the road width panel in WME look like. This is currently available in WME beta, meaning our beta testers are testing it and providing feedback and suggestions. So first and foremost, we renamed our tabs. It used to be the lanes tab, and now it's the lanes and road width to reflect the change. Then we have this new input form where you will be able to add the number of lanes at the entrance of the segment. That's really important to make the differentiation between the number of lanes at the beginning of the segments and the lane guidance that we use at the end of the segments. So those are two different values. Then we have the default lane width per road type. We collected information through your coordinators, and every country will have the default lane width in your specific country. You will see it there. And of course, you will be able to override if needed. So most of the times we'll use the default value, but you can always uncheck the box, use the default lane width, and then you can override. And in case you input a new value, this is the value that we will use to calculate the total width of the road. So you have plenty of freedom to change number of lanes, number of width, and then that's the information that it will be used. So what's next? As said at the beginning.
Can you go back one slide? I just want to add one thing. Sorry.
Sure.
I'm sorry. I just want to add a small thing regarding of default lane width here. If you don't know the lane width in that specific road, it's very useful for us to know the number of lanes and only the number of lanes and without filling the lane width. And we use different lane width defaults for each country and each road type. So if you know that in your country a specific road type has a specific width, you can pass us this information through the community managers, and we can update this to be the default for that country, that road type. Besides that, you don't. If you use meters or feet to state the lane width, that means you either took a meter and measured the lane, or checked with a satellite image, and you are sure enough to know what is the lane width there. Sorry, that's it.
Cool. Yeah, as Ofer said, we really collect all this information through the coordinators. Of course, we can always change this in configurable from our side. So in case you have any change, like we are here, and we can always change the default value. And of course, it's going to be, as Ofer said, per road type. So we don't have a default width that it's like applied to everything, like we have for freeways, for highways, major highways, and ramps. And that's the whole idea, to have really precise data that will improve the mechanism. So as we were saying, that currently road width is available in WME beta. So we're currently gathering feedback bug reports, suggestions. We are currently working on the improvement, of course, fixing the bugs reported, and making sure we improve the UX and UI of the feature based on your feedback. And of course, once everything will be ready and polished, we'll be happy to release this to production. And the other most exciting things that is gonna happen once we release the feature to beta, to production, sorry, of course, is, I guess you already understand what it is, and it's a map rate. So we're planning a worldwide map rate similar to what we did for Falcon, since it was a huge success. So again, thank you for the amazing work that you put in Falcon. It really make changes in the way Falcon can use this data and to the end user, to his experience. So it was really a huge success. Again, thank you. And the idea is to really to replicate this success, having a worldwide map rate for road width, add this information to as many segments as we can. And of course, we will be sending out guidelines to your coordinators with specific instruction on how to request a map rate, how to launch a map rate in your country. And of course, the most important, we'll have a dedicated icon for our road width map rate that we still don't know how it look like, but we gave you some hints. So why it is really important? In order to understand the huge impact that this feature can have to the driving experience, we need really to take a look back in time. So if we look at the past, we used to use the original measure of Waze. And every time we were trying to remain on the route, even if the GPS was really far from the match road. So the result was that it took really long time to reroute the user in case a missed turn, or for example, if it was taking the ramp or continuing on the highway. And the fact that it was taking really long time, this was leading to further confusion, and the driver was kind of lost, couldn't understand it. You realize that it took a wrong turn, but still it was not reflected or would be reflected really later on time on Waze. Today, as you know, we have the newly implemented Falcon Snapper. It totally improved the experience, as you probably already realized, and it's rolled out to production. But the important thing here that the more data points Falcon has, the better it can do its job. What does it mean? It means that Falcon is really capable of giving precise GPS position based on a lot of information that it can ingest. So we have all kinds of different information. One of it is, of course, road width. So the idea is that by adding the road width to the segments, specific to specific segments that we'll show you in the future, we will allow much faster reroute recalculation. And of course, we'll have way less false positive, meaning most of the times we'll know exactly where you are on the road, and this will really provide better and more precise instruction for the driver. So as you know, a video is worth 1,000 words. So I want to show you two small videos, really short, few seconds, of a section of a drive. So on the left, you can see a drive without road width, even with the new Falcon, but without this information. And in this example, you can see that if we would be driving on the right lane, we would cause us to be snapped on the ramp, even if we're staying on the main road. And it would take a bit of time to Waze to realize that it was on the wrong position, and then it would position back to the correct highway. And of course, if you don't know what the yellow arrow it is the actual position, the road GPS of the user. You can see that the road GPS is always on the same position, but Waze it's sometimes snapping and going back to it. If we now look at the same section, it's a bit shorter, but it's exactly the same section of road, a highway, a forking point where we added road width, and Falcon uses it to provide the positioning to the driver. So as you can see, it's now passing through the forking points. The road GPS is the exact same position of Waze. We are matched to the correct segments. No false positive is given here, no reroute needed. And I guess you can realize that the experience of the driver, of course, is going to be smoother, way better, and of course, will increase, the trust in Waze by having less false positive. So now that we understand why it is really important to have this information, I guess you're already asking yourself, okay, but where should we map it? And of course, how should we map this? So having this information for each segment would be really amazing, but we know that might be a really challenging task, meaning it means adding this information to a huge number of segments. So where we can map this information in specific points that can really have a huge impact for the drivers and make a change. First of all, forking points. You already saw in the examples that those are the use cases where sometimes Falcon can still not get it right. Then we have HOV and parallel segments. And as you know, HOV sometimes are dedicated segments running side by side with the highways. And of course, scenario where we have parallel segments where it can be harder for Falcon to position right the driver. And then, of course, toll booths, since you know that we have a highway and suddenly it's open up and the number of lanes multiplies by 2, 3, even 4 times just going through the toll booth. So looking at the specific use cases, forking points we saw in the videos. So it's really important that we add the number of lanes to all the segments involved. What does it mean? So we need to make sure that we have number of lanes on the segment leading to the forking points, to the continuation segment, meaning as we saw in the video that we continue in the highway instead of taking the exit. And then, of course, the ramp. By having this information and by keeping adding the number of lanes for all the segments that are parallel to each other, meaning they're running side by side, we will make really the life easier of Falcon to providing the best position to the user. HOV and parallel segments, as said before, you can see here we have 3, 4, even 5 segments that are really close to each other, and it can be sometimes hard for Falcon to position you right. So the idea is really to making sure we have this information through all the stretch that the segments are close, since the deviation can be really small and we can position you on the wrong segment. Also, the third example we said before, you can see, for example, here in toll booth, we have like 2 main lanes leading, one from south, one from north to the toll booth, and suddenly the toll booth opens up, and from 2 lanes we became, from what I can see, a country really fast, probably 12, 14 lanes. So to really avoid this use case where, for example, you are the driver arrived for a toll booth and we are not sure where to position him, sometimes we get this service lane or the lanes to the office of the toll booth. Really need to make sure that we have the correct number of lanes. And of course, the whole idea is, in case we have more than one segment, to split the number of lanes among those segments, so we have a full coverage of the number of lanes. And of course, this also will really help the driver to understand where he's positioned in the same moment. So now that everything is clear, so we know how does it work, we know how does it look in the WME, we know what to do, where should we map it, and how should we map it. So what is our mission? So our mission is to mapping 100% of the example we listed above, forking points, toll booths, and HOV or parallel segments. And of course, if we will succeed to reach this objective, I'm sure we make Gil really happy. For the one of you that know who is Gil is really a product manager that is working with us, and he's the owner of the Falcon Snapper, meaning the owner of the project. And of course, since Roadwit is really part of Falcon, is also leading this project. And I'm sure that if we will see that a lot of countries will hit the goal, it will be super happy. And most importantly, the driving experience of millions of users using Waze, it will be much better. Thank you very much. And I guess, Brett, we can now move to the Q&A.
Sounds like a plan. Thank you so much, Ruben and Ofer, for your input. And now I'm going to start reading your questions. and our guests here will answer them. So Erez, let's put up our first question on the board. So this one's from William. Will there be any pre-filled information from what we've done with lane guidance, which should tell you how many lanes there are at certain points?
Sure, I think I can take this. Maybe if Ofer can want to add something, I'm happy. So we got these questions a lot, even while we were in beta. We know that it can sound redundant to applying twice the same information, but we really have to say this is not the same information. We indeed, while developing the feature, we were presented with two options, really using the lane guidance information. But if you think about it, most of the times the number of lane at the entrance of the segment, it's not the same number at the exit, because if you think about it, like when you're at a junction, it opens up and maybe you have 1 or 2 lanes more. And even if we would have gone through this with this path, first we would have a lot of segments with wrong data, and second, the editor would have need to split every time the segments to get the correct data. So it would be even more work and probably less proactive work, just like fixing the issues. And the other approach was really to adding new information at the entry of the segments, and really this kind of like a new approach and the beginning of the vision where this will allow editors to add information, for example, road width, speed limit, and other kind of information to segments without splitting the segments. That's really like the beginning of a better editing future. So currently, to answer the questions, no information will be pre-filled connected to lanes, but that was the why of we decided to go this way. I don't know if Ofer wants to add something, but
Nope, you're good.
Cool.
All right, thanks, Ruben. Let's go to our next question. And by the way, everybody, you know you can vote on the questions at the submission site. So if you really like one of these questions, push it up in the rankings and then we'll read it sooner. So our next question again is from William. What are the most important segments to have road width defined?
So I said before, and as you saw from the presentation, like I wouldn't define them like most important segments, but like we have like use cases, scenario, like group of, like cases where we want this to have it. I said, of course, like forking points, it's really important. You saw in the video how it's big the difference with or without the road width. Then, of course, we have HOV segments if you have in your country. We know that it's not relevant for all the countries over the world, but a similar case, it's parallel segments. So if you have roads running on the same direction, like for like long stretch side by side, it's really important to have them. Toll booth, as we said, and of course the idea is really, if we launch the map rate, to trying to supporting you, sharing with you specific permalinks when it's good to map them, and of course if you have in mind, since you are the one that drive, since you are the one that know the maps, if you have specific in mind cases or specific corner of your country that you remember that you were mismatched or was snapped to the wrong segments, of course adding this information would really help the mechanism position you right. So that's the idea.
Awesome. Ofer, anything to add?
No, just another way to look at this question is that it's more of a solution. So if you encounter a problem, this is snapping to the correct route.
Interesting. Alrighty, let's move on to our next. From Anonymous, do we have to divide the number of segments if the number of lanes changes?
That's another great question that we... Go for it.
Go ahead.
No,
okay,
you can go ahead.
Currently we don't have a way to change the number of lanes on. If you want to map the change in the number of lanes through the segment, then yes, you will have to divide it. But in general, you don't have to divide all the segments and map all the lanes. We don't want this to multiply the number of segments by dividing it. It's not what we're planning to do. This is more of a solution for cases in which the snapper is not working because two segments are too close to each other, or the turn is very important, and in driving fast, you don't want to have a reroute at that point. So sometimes it's enough to map only the entrance to that segment, and even if the number of segments changes through the segment, you don't have to map that change. But if there are more exits on that segment, maybe you do want to split it. So each case is different.
Yeah, I totally agree with Ofer that it really depends from the specific scenario. But the general idea, if I can connect this answer to the main one, the one that Ofer said, like really the main idea is like to help you not split the segments every time. Since we like that's the whole idea that you don't need to split the segments, but we're actually only giving the information at the beginning of the segment. So there is no need to split it. Of course, there will be specific use cases. Ofer said that it is important to split it because you want to give this information for both entrants of the segments, but the general idea is there is no special need for it. Like that's not the way to go by default.
And if you drive that segment and Waze routing works perfectly, then you don't have to map that as well. Like it could help us to more data, but this is a solution, not a problem.
Makes sense. All right, let's throw up our next question from Jay. Are there segments which do not need road width defined?
I think Offer a kind of answer to these questions. So I said, of course, like having this information is amazing. Like the more we have this data, the more like it really can help us. But I said, like if we have a lot of scenarios where our where Falcon by himself works really good, where the routing mechanism works really good, there is no doubt about it because of the way the map looks like. Meaning not our map, but the reality. Like you have enough space from side to side. For example, if on a highway is really wide, like the more lanes there are, the easier it is for Falcon to position you. The really hard it is, for example, when you have a 1 or 2 lanes highway and a ramp, they are really attached to each other. So we don't have a definition where you don't need to map it. Of course, if you want to map it, you can map it everywhere. But where it works, there is not a real need. So I guess like it was answered.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And also, you know, with like the specific use cases where you have a parallel road or a fork that's very clear, I think that's sort of the areas where we want to concentrate. So what's up next? Who do we got? From Ken, how will bike lanes be handled?
I don't know if Ofer want to take this, but like currently I don't think we have we're not handling them. So we don't take them in consideration currently. I don't know if this question is connected to GPS points, noise, or something like this. We currently don't provide navigation for bikes, so we don't really look at them, and we don't handle them. I'm not sure if also you're referring to, I know, bike, if it's a bicycle or a motorbike, if you have in your country specific, I don't know, motorbike lanes.
Well, let's take this from the question that Erez just threw up on the screen here, the follow-up on this, if it's relevant for bus lanes, and let's open this question up a bit to any sort of specialty lane. Is this going to also be relevant for that, or is it just for our standard highway segments that you had mapped out previously?
I would assume that bus lanes are more common in cities. That I think it's less common those scenarios that we presented. But we currently, at this moment, at this stage, really don't differentiate between the type of lanes. So if, for example, we have 3 lanes and 1 bus lanes, but at the end, that's the actual width of the wall section. So I would add all of them. Of course, we can double check with Gil to make 100% sure. And of course, we will be happy to see examples. If we could get like a couple of permalinks, like, and look at them, like we can better, you know, like provide you directions.
Here's an interesting comment in the chat from Sketch. Let's put that up and see if this is something you guys agree with. That what needs to be mapped is the entire drivable width of the segment. So if there's a parking lane or a bike lane outside of the drivable width, we are not including it.
Yeah, that's correct.
Awesome.
Because anyway, we don't want you to snap you to a segment that you cannot drive on it.
That makes a lot of sense. Ofer, did you have something to add?
I think Sketch said it already, but I will say that if a bus can drive there and a bus can use this lane to the number of lanes, but if there's a bike lane and a car cannot drive on that bike lane, then we shouldn't map it. And it's accurate and technology will be better. We will be able to estimate on which lane you're driving by this data. This is really cool information because we could use it for other directions for the driver.
Alrighty. Let's move on to our next question from Mikael. How about living streets? Those have only one lane used for both directions, not one lane per direction. I know it says line, but I'm guessing he meant lane, so I'm going to auto-correct it.
Ofer, you want to take it?
I'm actually not sure, Ruben, because we do support both two-directional lanes, but we didn't. I think we have a definition of the width per lane. So maybe it's better to consider this as one two-directional segment that has like shorter width, narrow lanes for each side, and then if that segment is I don't know 4 meters, then for A to B and 2 meters are for B to A. This is how I would map it.
Yeah, I don't know if like also like what living streets is specifically as y'all is saying, like referring to one segment that has bi-directional segments. Of course, you can.
I think they're referring to a residential street over a busier road.
Yeah, I guess first of all, like we need to see if there is the need at all to map this. Like, but if you indeed want to map it, like first you can map the width of the two direction. For example, once you select a bi-directional segments, you will have the capability to input the number of lanes of both sides. And of course, I think the most important things that maybe we didn't say before that, like, of course, this info are really important. Like, still, like the mechanism, it already works without this information, and of course, it has kind of it can deal with some errors. So like, like we're not looking at centimeters here. And if there is a bit of errors, it can manage it and of course adapt itself. So like we're not really looking specifically at the exact millimeter of the road, of the number of lanes. So we can manage it. But of course, like if we will see examples, I guess we can go over the example and like double check even with Gil and making sure we have the correct answer for you.
Awesome.
And there's also an important comment from the Falcon Tech on the comments saying that on living streets, Falcon shouldn't be a problem. So in most cases, this data, you don't need to map it in living streets because there is no snapping. Yeah, this one. Thank you. Okay.
Alrighty. So we put up our next question from Anonymous. Should emergency lanes on the highway be counted as being part of the road? This sort of
I think it's the same family of questions of before. It was answered from both of us, from Sketch.
Right.
So if it's a drivable section of the road, you should map it. If it's a not drivable section, you shouldn't map it. So if it's a service lane, it's like the side of a highway, it shouldn't be mapped, only the driving section of the road.
Excellent. Thanks, Ruben. Another anonymous question. Toll booth segments start small, 2 to 3 lanes, and end with many, even up to 20 lanes. Isn't mapping the number of lanes at the beginning of the segment anyway wrong?
No. The idea is really like to having this information like at the entrance of the segment, since we can start positioning you, since Falcon can really like start to match the position, and if we will have this information at the beginning of the segment, it should be able to position you correctly. Of course, if the segments of the toll booth is composed of more than one segment, meaning, as we said before, maybe split like 2 or 3 segments over the stretch of the toll booth. I'm not sure if there are cases like this. Of course, it's important to map this information over all the stretch. So if there are 2 segments, of course, adding road width at the entrance of each segment. If there are more, of course, adding for each segment that is part of the toll booth.
Thanks, Ruben. Let's move on. Keep our next question. From Felipe, we have in toll booth, the ETA is not calculated for auto payment lanes. For example, in Brazil, usually the lane on the right is only for permit tag, and you do not need to stop. We mapped these lanes as express lanes, but the ETA does not consider this.
Yeah, I think that's really not related to road width, but I guess we can we need here more information, maybe permalinks, or maybe if you have a few examples of origin and destination, when you see that the different ETA is not calculated, you can open a bug in center code and we can take it from there, or you can send it to your community manager and we can look at it, but someone needs to look into it. It cannot be answered on 2 feet now.
Got it. Let's queue up another question. From Nate, any updates on far lanes improvement of lane guidance?
I will start. I guess Ofer can continue. Indeed, we don't have real updates, meaning nothing is coming out really in the near future, but I can say that the team is really working on it. Currently, as we speak, we are defining and designing the potential solution. We got already some input from some specific people to understand if it was the right solution for our community. So nothing really editing capabilities going out in the real near future, but we're really working on it and defining it. And Ofer is one of them working on it. So maybe if you want to add something.
Yeah, we're working on it.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah, no, indeed, it's not an easy feature as opposed to road width. It's inputting data and then using it through it's a really more complex, and we really want to make sure that we get it right, and that could be something that could be used on the long run, that that solve your cases for each country. As you know, we have different way of mapping in every country, so make sure we got it right. But currently, the team is designing it and thinking about how to structure the feature. So,
excellent. Thank you, guys. Let's move on to our next question from Anonymous. What about default road width for different street types? Well, that's variable sure. Country by country, right?
Yeah, we support this. Every road type has a different road width. Of course, it's not road width, it's lane width. And then, of course, based on the number of lanes, we multiplicate this for the total number of lanes. We have it. We support really different, there's a different value for each road type. And of course, it's a different value for each country and specific road type. As said before, we got this information from your coordinators. You can also double check with them. Generally, also that that most of the values are really close to each other. There is not this huge difference between country by country. Of course, if you look at, I don't know, group of countries like Europe or LATAM or North America, but still even worldwide, the values are really close to each other. We have a small difference, but still each country will get his default value per road type. So we already support this, and as soon as we'll be released to production, you already be able to see the default width in the WME.
Awesome. So let's move on. Another anonymous question. I love all the different ways people are spelling anonymous from all around the world. It really tickles me. So if a freeway segment has lane guidance mapped for an exit, for instance, 3 lanes straight and 1 lane to the exit, the WME should assume that the width of the next freeway segment is 3 lanes and the width of the exit ramp is 1 lane. Will road width for such segments be automatically set to save some work?
So the answer is no. We understand actually the questions, really understand the rationale behind the questions, and I think it was the first question of the Q&A. But really, the idea is like not always it's correct. You're right, but we couldn't have a like bulletproof solution that would work everywhere. And also the idea is to setting this information at the entrance of the segments. It will serve us on the long run, and the idea is to support this even for other features, and really to make sure that we can add and input data without the need of splitting the segments. Again, really understand, and we know that like it will be a lot of work mapping it, but of course, like even if you're gonna launch a map ready in your country, if you're not launching a map ready in your country, like we will really be here for you, trying to support you, providing specific permalinks to specific areas, to forking points, to whatever is needed. So really to make your life easier, to make sure that you can focus specifically on places and scenario where it needs to be mapped, and like remove the noise from you. So unfortunately, we don't have any mechanism to auto-fill the road width on the upcoming segment based on the line guidance of the previous one.
Got it. Alrighty, let's move on to another question. Another anonymous. What if the segment starts with 1 lane, but then quickly changes to 2 lanes? Will it work correctly with road width, or do we have to separate the segment?
Again, I think we also answered this. Really, the idea is not to split the segments. Since, for example, even if it's, I don't know, like a 1 lane segment, then it will reach a forking point. The idea is to have this information at the beginning of this segment, or the beginning of the upcoming segment, and this information will be enough for Falcon to precisely snap you to the right segment. So even if it changed in between, like it's fine. Like there's no need to specifically split the segment. Again, like we of course like apply the common sense, of course, and the ruling in your country to really understand if it would be important to split it. But most of the times, the idea is not to split the segments, only to add the road width.
Alrighty. Thanks again for going over that. I think we might see it again in the questions as they come up. So from Lars, will road width eventually be visualized in the WME and or the app?
Ofer, you want to take this?
Yeah, so this is a great question that we also got from the beta community once we showed them this feature. And due to the feedback, we are now considering how this should be done. We also have plans for WME and how to display the roads and the different layers. So this question is directly referring to that project, and we are participating with other developers on the question of how to visualize the lanes and the road. So we don't have a solution yet, but we are working on it, and it's in our plans.
Yeah, great. As Ofer said, we really got this feedback. We know there are already like scripters that are already working on a solution and it's already working in beta, so you can see the different like coloring and like how heavy would be the line based on the road width. we indeed like look into suggestions and how to better solve this. And we know that it's kind of a general discussion that it's coming back every feature that we would like to surface some information. Of course, we always there is kind of a challenge within showing information, but like not too much, and still making sure the UI is like pleasant and like functional for editing. But of course, we are looking into it in the suggestion.
Excellent. Thank you, guys. Let's move on from Leo. We already filled in the default road width, but now the wrong default values are shown. When will this be corrected?
So while in beta, you're right. We launched beta without adding the default road width that you added. If I'm not mistaken, the configuration was already changed. I can double check. But in the upcoming days, or I think you can already see, I don't want to be like, I'm not telling you 100% sure because I'm not sure.
He means default lane width, not road width. He's writing in chat right now.
Yeah, I mean, the default value, part of the feature, like once released to beta, it was not there. Now it should be there, or will be there in the near future. And yeah, so it will be corrected. You will see it, unless, and even if while we were in beta with the wrong default value, you override it because maybe there was a need. We actually announced it in beta, but if you override it, that's the value that we stay, because it means that you uncheck the box, you input a specific value. So even if we will input the new values, your values will not be overridden. So you will see the new values, like probably you should see it already or in the really near future.
Thanks, Ruben. So it looks like, Ruben, I'm going to win this bet because we have 15 more questions to get through. Everybody tonight, Ruben thought that we weren't going to get very many questions. He was so nervous that no one was going to have anything to say. And here we are. So
I was sure.
We'll decide on a prize later when I can actually see you again. So next up from Jay. How do we handle underground segments or those without GPS reception, either those with beacons or those without? It's an interesting question.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question. I must admit that I don't have the full answer of it. My assumption is that, of course, like this information would still be valuable. Of course, if there are beacons, since we can provide the guidelines, and I guess even without, but of course we can double check with Gil and like get back to you. I'm saying like just thinking, like out loud. Of course, having this information, it won't damage the map. It can only like benefit it. But of course, we don't want you to make like useless edits, or not useless, but like if we don't really like
non-impactful. Let's call it non-impactful edits.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. If you don't get any impact or you want to improve the experience to the driver, but for sure we can double check it. So like we'll double check it Gil and make sure to get back to you.
Thanks.
I don't know if Ofer has any idea about it, but I personally don't know.
I agree with everything you said. With beacons, it could be helpful. Without beacons, it will have no impact the way I see it. But let's double check it with Gil and get back to you.
Sure.
Okay, from Victor. We have lots of reversible streets, segments where some or all lanes changes their direction based on a daily schedule. Ah, interesting. How could I add that kind of info on main avenues?
Yeah, I think I saw some of them because we had an issue back then. I must say that also here, like for sure we will double check with Gil and get back to you. Yeah, because I think he needs to look, because we don't have a proper solution today to use it. So like we need to look at the way you map it, because I don't know, create twice the segments parallel, and some of them, each one with a TDR or a specific restriction. So we really need to look at it to provide you the exact answer. So I guess we'll get back to you.
All right. From Chris, is this also used for routing through really small streets where two-way is not possible?
Again, I guess somehow we touched this point. If it's a really small street, I'm not sure if there will be use cases where we'll have a hard time like snapping to the right segment. And same. So if we'll have this information, it could help if you think that it's needed, or if you drove there and you saw that we are not sure about positioning, but shouldn't be the group of cases where it's really needed.
Mm-hmm. Alrighty, moving on from Jose. How do we represent on toll booths when they have 10 lanes and at some hours, 7 of them go on one direction into the city and 3 into the opposite, and then they are inverted, 7 out of the city and 3 into when traffic reverses at the reverse rush hour?
Yeah, I think all of those like last questions, specific cases, would be amazing to look at them because it's a bit hard and like to answer. Still here applying general common sense. I think the idea is really to having like the width no matter the direction, because also here I'm not sure how do you map it this in reality in WME. So yeah, I guess it's the same family as Victor said. So we really need to look at it in WME. So if you can send permalinks would be amazing. Or how you today map those cases. As Mark said, like you can use the maximum, but of course we can look at it as Gil and as said before. Really, the system is capable of using this data and of course adjusting a bit. Like even if there's one extra lanes, like it won't make a huge impact. Of course, like if we have 2 lanes and you map it to 10, that would be a bit different. But if it's like a slightly small different, as far as I understand from Gil, like we are able to manage it and like mitigate the error. But again, I think it would be super interesting to collect all those cases, look at them, and then we would be happy to provide specific guidance on how to map.
All right, so you heard it here, folks. Feel free to experiment and send us your logs, and we are going to have fun diving into these cases. From Tamas, we have, if a number of lanes is not defined, how will the segment be treated? Same as with a 1-lane set, so 1-lane segments for both directions, each need not to be set manually.
I'm not sure I understand the
So
second part of the question.
I will answer this one. You cannot set and you cannot save the road without saving the number of lanes. So this question is not this case is not possible. You'll have to define the number of lanes, and if you keep it as 1 lane, then the Falcon and the Snapper will treat it as 1 lane.
Got it. Thank you, Ofer. So another anonymous question. By mapping 100% of forks, do you mean 100% of forks where there might be a problem, or literally 100%? Some forks have enough of an angle to not cause any problems.
I was saying 100% of forks, but because the general idea is like that we can extract the permalinks of those forking points and provide them to you. Of course, we can even go deeper and try to calculate the angles, but I guess you would know best since you drive there and know the area. Of course, like if we don't reach 100% because you tell us those cases we didn't map because we know that the mechanism works fine, like we will take it into account and we can consider 100%. So it was a general objective to say, okay, we can extract those permalinks and let's measure if we reach 100% of those. But of course, we can remove those ones that you said that you are sure that they works. No need to map them, and of course, like we can still say that you reached the 100%. No worries.
So thank you, Ruben. I'd just like to go back for a minute to our last question from Tamas because we have some follow-up in chat. So first is, and if you don't have a number of set lanes at all, just leave them as they are. And then Sketch also said, I think he's asking how Falcon will handle a road with no road width set. So can we just like clear that up on these individual cases?
So let's start with the first one. If you don't save this information, the routing algorithm will continue behaving as it does now. So if that and everything works fine, then you don't necessarily have to map it. That's one. And what was the second question?
Sure. Let me put it back up for you. So how Falcon will handle a road with no road width set.
So again, as it did until now. So whatever worked until now will continue working. And the way it works is that it estimates your location from your phone and then try to snap to the closest segment by the direction of your drive.
Got it. Thank you, Ofer. Let's move on to a new question. I hope we cleared that up for everybody. From Felipe, we have, for lane guidance, we have to map the lanes at the end of the segmented. And for Falcon, we need to map the lanes at the beginning. Which is the priority, beginning or the end?
As we said before, I think those are two totally different features, and those provide two totally different value to the user. Both of them are really important. And still, I think lanes are also similar to road width, but even when we launched lanes, the idea was to say, okay, you should map it when you think that seeing lanes on the screen and on the turn instruction bar will really add value to the user. So if it's, like, I don't know, a hash junction, an H junction, or even a plus junction, but can be complicated, it's really important to have this information, map it. The same thing here. If there's a forking point, it's really tight, close to each other, the ramp is really close, please map it. Like, if you, as you saw, like, the reality there, if you think that, like, if you know that there is no issue, so there is no need to map it. But probably in the same segment, it's more important to map lanes and not road width. So there is no really a 100% like a answer can work everywhere. Still, like, really use your common sense specifically to the use case. I guess I would also add that if you're already like touching a segment, if you're adding new lane guidance and you're there, it's in the same tab. It's really a small edit. And if you think it add value, like, it's really worth adding the number of lanes and saving it. So that should be like, there is no, like 100% correct answer here.
Alrighty. Another complicated question, this time from Victor. How to proceed with toll booths? I think that we've covered this one enough, right? We could probably skip this unless you have some specific toll booth advice to give here.
I don't know what was the other parts of the question, like example. I don't know. Like, the idea is really like, if you have, for example, 2 segments and there are like 10 lanes, make sure that each segment has 5 lanes, meaning that together they will cover the total number of lanes. Or of course, if there is 1 segment only, just put 10. If there are 3, just divide it. Like, make sure that, for example, you have 4, 3, and 3. The general idea is to reflect reality. And based on the number of segments, you can input the specific number of lanes. I don't know if the question was specific for some example, it wasn't clear, but like, also, like, if we will see examples, like, happy to look at it.
I think with the toll booth,
I would like to add that when you go past the toll booth itself, you probably won't get a reroute because Falcon knows the direction you're driving in, and there are usually no other roads going out of that booth, right? So the goal of the road feature is to estimate and when you drive through a toll booth, you don't really have many options. You're waiting in line, you're going through the booth, and even if the current positioning of your car is not correct on the map, in most cases, you won't get a reroute. There are no other routes there. Unless I'm mistaken, Ruben, maybe you or someone from the community can comment. Maybe I'm missing something. But Falcon will know the direction you're driving it. It won't think that you're driving the other way.
Yeah, I guess you're right. Still, I think like maybe if there are still doubts, like we need to look at specific example. But like, yeah.
I think that the anxiety around toll booths that the questions are showing is that they are all very complicated and can be very different. So it's going to have to be sort of a case by case when we get to the toll booths. Yeah, and also there are toll booths with forks nearby. It's like it's sort of a more complicated section of a highway. So let's take our last question. I think that we have earned it. 2 more? You want 2 more? Okay, we're gonna power through, you guys. I know that you're tired, but we can do this.
It's fine. We love to run.
So, do you have a guide? Oh, and this is from Yasman. So we have, do you have a guide for the average width for one lane? We can use the average width multiply by number of lanes. So I think you've covered this already, that the...
Yeah, I mean, you will provide us with the, I'm not sure what you mean by guide, but like you can measure it. I don't know, you can look through your, I don't know, maybe country website if there is somewhere, or the company that actually manages the highways or freeway, if there is a published somewhere like the road width, and then if you provide to us, you will see in the WME, and then of course you will need to input the number of lanes, and we will multiply the number of lanes per the default lane.
Oh, we lost Ofer. Okay, so let's take our final question from Andy. What if a long 2-lane segment splits off into a 6-lane junction? Which width should we enter? The small one or the width at the junction?
So I think we answered this like multiple times.
Yeah.
Put the road width. Always thinking this way. When you define lane guidance, you are defining lane guidance at the end of the segment. So in your case, same lane junction. So like go by it, look at the map view, like the satellite view imagery, and like you can say like there are 6 lanes. But of course, if you're mapping at the beginning, and if at the beginning there are 2 lanes, you can feel safe about inputting 2 lanes.
Thanks, Ruben. And it looks like we got Ofer back just in time for our parting words. I'd really like to thank both of you for joining us today. Any final wishes you'd like to leave the community with before we say goodbye?
I think it was an amazing session. I was really happy to see that a lot of interest and like really cool questions. Actually, I saw a lot of known faces. So like I guess there are also like beta editors. So feel free to share the feedback permalinks in the dedicated thread, or of course through your community manager. We're here and happy to look at the specific cases and answer. And that I'm really looking forward for the future, going out to production, having you map, of course, getting more questions and answer them, and of course, like seeing like this big map rate and replicate the success of Falcon.
Definitely. Ofer, any final thoughts?
Just wanted to thank everyone for attending and connection and interaction and feedback.
Thanks, Ofer. So everyone, thank you again for sticking with us for another exciting episode of Waze Community's Office Hours. I know this episode was a little shaky. Usually we love having everyone here in studio with us, but as you may have heard, the COVID situation here isn't the best, so our guests had to remain home this time. Hopefully next month, we'll have everyone back in studio. So I'm really looking forward to seeing you all on October 10th, when we're going to have our next exciting edition of Waze Community Office Hours. So stay tuned, and we will have more information for you guys on the forum and much more on Road Width as this feature rolls out. See you guys all next month.